Well, hello, Tennyson. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, how's it going?
It's going awesome. Yeah, it's going really well. I can't even remember when we chatted last, but things are moving.
Yeah,
So
how is your book coming along?
coming along well. We are starting to outline, we're starting to work on the beginning chapters, so that's really exciting. And then simultaneously just building out the pillars of my content to hopefully translate that into presentations and whatever else comes.
Oh,
So it's kind of fun to see it starting to come together. So yeah.
yeah. Any idea of when the book will be released?
Well, I think
We're all anxiously waiting.
oh, thank you. I think the first draft will be done by the end of the year. That's the goal. And so
Okay.
probably not until spring of next year. So
Okay, so in a year.
yeah, it'll go by fast.
Boy, it sure takes a long time, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah. And I'm trying to work on I'm just starting to work trying to find literary agents and do that. And that's kind of exciting because I have some good connections. So we'll see where that goes too.
Yeah. Well, I wish you the best, and I'm looking forward to
Thank
next spring.
you. Thank you.
So
It's gonna be
today I want to talk about intuition. And I
awesome.
wanted to ask you, is intuition kind of like mind reading or predicting, or how would you describe what tuition is?
Oh my gosh, great question. I think intuition, excuse me, is this inner knowing, this inner guidance. I believe, and I'm very spiritual and I don't define it in any way because I think everybody has their own way of defining it, but I think it is this just inner wisdom that we have, whether that comes from, excuse me, I'm drinking like this electrolyte powder.
Oh,
um,
just the powder.
just the powder.
I'd be
uh,
choking too.
but I think whether you define that as God, universe, source, inner knowing, whatever it is, I believe it's this inner wisdom, this inner guidance that ultimately wants you to live the life that you are meant for. I think I know we all have unique gifts and talents. And I think, I see life as almost like these two paths. You can we're all born and then eventually, pass on. And you can live this life that's kind of good and cool, like life happens, or there's this like higher path, this higher option that's really what your uh higher self or whatever you want to call it wants for you because that's how you're created. And I think that's what our intuition is ultimately trying to guide us to get us to fully express our gifts and serve others and ultimately live a fulfilling life for ourselves.
That's interesting. How did you get into this? Into knowing intuition?
uh,
And you,
So, from the first episode I was on your podcast, we talked about this crazy life story that an experience that I went through. And in that, I shared with you. So, this guy breaks into our house, he attacks me. Um, After he left, I had this he's coming back. Like that came
that's
through
right.
my mind. And I was like, what? And it wasn't this place of anxiety, fear. It was just like, he's coming back. I know he's coming back. It was just this thought. And I shared with, all the detectives and the cops, he's coming back. I just know he's coming back. And was told, they never come back. And he did. And I was right. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I knew it. There's something about what I pieced together with my experience with him that told me he was coming back. And so for the first few, and when he did come back and everything happened, and I was talking to a detective, she recommended the book, The Gift of Fear, which I can't remember if I recommended that when we first chatted, but the book, The Gift of Fear, is a lot about intuition, and it's an incredibly powerful book. I think woman should read it, but it helps you understand all these subtle cues that are like what your subconscious is putting together to help you have this thought or this feeling. And So for the first few years, I really only understood intuition through the lens of like safety. If I get in the elevator with this person, am I safe? Walking on the sidewalk, should I cross the street if I'm walking by this person? Like that was only how I understood intuition to be. And then I started in my business, having these experiences where it was like, I knew what I should do and I didn't do it. And then it didn't work out. So to give you an example, like, I would interview somebody and I was like, this doesn't feel like a fit. Like, I don't think this is right. And then I would listen to other people who are like, help me justify it. Like, hey, they have experience. They, are licensed. They're, all these things. I'm like, okay, you start to rationalize it. And so then I would go with what they'd recommend or they'd say, going against my own feeling, and it would not work out. And that happened a couple times. And so I was like, dude, every time I have a feeling, like what I felt was actually accurate and was what was right for me. And I don't regret those experiences because it really, it helped me grow in ways, hiring people that weren't the right fit for me. But it also really strengthened my own belief in myself. I had to have those experiences of essentially not listening, to be like, no, I was right. So then I was like, dang, this is really interesting. And so I just started trying to pay attention to it a little bit more. Simultaneously, I'm in therapy and I've been working with my therapist for almost 5 years now. And a lot of the work we do is awareness. And that's just like, again, that shows up a lot for me in business. I remember like having to have tough conversations with employees. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? How's this going to go? I don't want to be a jerk. And my therapist would really help me learn, like, Tenny, be aware that when you go into that conversation, you're going to be nervous. And so even just that practice of starting to be aware of when I was anxious, when I was frustrated, that practice of seeing how my body felt, how my emotions felt, I think started to slowly just get me more in tune with other things that were coming my way that was essentially my intuition.
And you mentioned earlier subtle cues.
Subtle cues.
Yeah, you said you have subtle. When did I say that? You said you had subtle cues about, I think the person coming back to your house. You said there were subtle cues you didn't think about till later. So what were those? Do you have any idea?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So honestly, I don't really know exactly because I think subconsciously I'm picking up on it. I'm not 100% aware. Consciously, if that makes sense. If you read the book, The Gift of Fear, again, totally plugging it, he does just help explain some of the subtle cues. Like there's an example of a man offering a woman to like help her carry her groceries up. And so he says something like, oh, those look really heavy for you. I should help you out. Like she wasn't struggling, but he's making her feel that she's struggling. And then he said something else like, you don't want to put a stranger out who's offering you to help. Like, he's just messing with her mind and maybe, and then other like nonverbal communication, right? Like how they look at you, what their demeanor is. And that was, I think the subtle cues for me was just the demeanor, the look of the person. But again, a lot of it is subconscious and that I don't fully consciously know what all of them were. Does that help?
Yeah. We had a guy, I just thought of this now. There was a guy that knocked on our door not long ago. And when we opened it, he was a realtor and he said, he wanted to know if we wanted to sell our house because his parents were looking for a house. And he was knocking on doors and he was looking kind of in our house. And that was like, oh, I don't know. That's kind of strange. Somebody knock on your door. I know it's kind of common a little bit now, but he said he's looking for his parents and he's not finding anything, but he was still looking. And so I wanted to get him out of there as soon as possible. And
Yeah.
I don't know if this was a real thing or not, but is that kind of an intuitive type of thing?
Yeah, 100%. I think it reminds me of how, like, what I've learned about intuition is it's very neutral. It doesn't come from a place of anxiety or fear. Like it's just almost a thought or a feeling or knowing. And in that situation, something felt off for you. And I think, and not always is it the case that that person's going to be a crazy person,
Right.
but it is also like something's off. So honoring that. And, somebody I've been connected with, 𝗕𝗺𝗵𝗵𝗿 𝗕𝗺𝗵𝗵𝗃, who's incredible at like understanding the human brain and fear and all of this stuff. It's like his big thing is choose safety. Like, why not? And if you feel off in that situation, choose safety, like get him out. Like, it does, like there's something off. And again, maybe nothing would have happened, but honoring that is really important. And that's a huge thing of what I want to help women, because as women, we tend to be people pleasers or like, unfortunately, society has taught us to think through everything versus sometimes feel through it. And I just want to help women like honor that. And who cares if it wasn't a thing? It was a feeling for you for a reason. So
yeah. How do you develop your intuition? And how do you know if you have it?
Well, I think everybody has it. Everybody does have it. It's like, what I've learned with it is it's like a muscle and you just have to practice using it. If you don't ever think about it or use it, it's just you're never going to be aware that it's there.
Yeah, because maybe I use it a lot, but I don't know that that's what it is.
Totally. So I think one thing that helped me is understanding how it shows up, because it shows up for people differently. And when I've listened, there's a lot of books and podcasts, and that's one thing that I'm super passionate about is like, if you want to know about intuition, start reading books and start listening to podcasts and just like get curious and like learn all you can. But when I think a lot of people sometimes talk about intuition through how they experience it. So I remember learning about there's what's called the 4 clairs. I don't know if you've heard of these.
I have not.
So there's clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance, and there's other clairs as well. Those are just the 4 main ones. And I feel funny, like even saying these, because I remember the first time like talking to somebody who was clairvoyant, I was like, oh my gosh, am I like in voodoo land? Like, what am I doing? But it really, again, has helped me have a framework to understand intuition more. And basically, clairaudience is a clair hearing. So some people hear, like it's like they hear how their intuition shows up for them. Claircognizance is a clear knowing. So you feel like you know something. Clairsentience is a clear feeling. And then what am I forgetting? Whatever other one, which is me. I don't know. I lost it. But for me, how it shows up is a clear knowing. So I'll just know like, that's not right. How everybody talks about trust your gut, like some people,
yes,
like, that comes from because people actually feel it in their gut. I've never felt it in my gut, to be completely honest with you. It's more of like a clear knowing. So, to give you an example, like, so this was funny yesterday. So my husband is a firefighter. He works at the fire department. So yesterday I had to have, my mother-in-law, she always picks up our kids from school, and then we meet up and we do after school activities. Well, yesterday she had plans, so I had to pick up the kids from school, but like, I totally forgot. And so it was even on my calendar.
Oh my
but
gosh.
it was so different than what I'm used to. And I have a new employee starting this week. There's just so much going on that even though it was on my calendar, I didn't even register oh yeah, you're supposed to pick up the kids today. And so it was I don't know, 15 minutes before their school got out. And I felt this you should text your mother-in-law about meeting with the kids. And I never text her because we just meet. We know where we're going to meet. We know what time we're going to meet. And it was you should text her just about it. And I was like, okay. And again, it's just a subtle, you should text her. And I'm like, okay, I should probably text her. And so then I texted her. And she was like, remember, I can't pick them up today, but I'm actually home. So I'll go right now and I'll go get in line. And so it all worked out.
So she ended up picking them up.
She picked them up.
Okay.
Yeah. But if I wouldn't have texted her, then they would have been at school alone. I would have been, and then we would have been late there was all this other stuff. I had to take her to the doctor's appointment and then go to activities. And so for me, that's exactly how intuition shows up. It's oh, you should text her. And I'm like, okay. Or this was I don't really have the visual one very much, but my husband and I, there's some investments we'll do or whatnot. And there was this one that we were introduced to. And when I learned about what it was, and just I would listen to the conversations from the people trying to get the investments. I had this visual, just American Greed. It was just it's almost like a screen, and it said American Greed, which is the show where it's all about these Ponzi schemes and stuff like that.
Really?
And so this all hasn't played out completely, but let's just say that it's probably not looking very good. So which that was a risk we took. So it's little things like that, but it's the way, to your question of how can we develop our intuition, I think it's really in the small moments, starting out with small moments that are super low stakes. So that could be what do we have for dinner tonight? The other day I felt this is really random, and I know you're very healthy, and I try to be as well, but I wanted taco time. That was my first job. I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't had a crisp bean burrito in, I don't know, 15 years. And I felt like I wanted a crisp bean burrito. And then I was like, no, that's not healthy. That's not good for you. You don't need a crisp bean burrito. That's fine. And so I got a sandwich, and I was like, that's, I can get some vegetables on there and get a good amount of protein. And then I got my sandwich, and it fell flat. It was very disappointing.
Oh, that's too bad.
I know. And then I was like, I should have gotten my freaking crisp bean burrito. And then I was just disappointed. And that's so silly. It's so little, but just practicing those small moments of what feels right in the moment.
Go with your first instinct.
Yeah,
exactly. Is that an instinct when you pick one thing on the menu and then you switch to something else, and then you're like, oh, I should have gotten the first thing.
Totally.
So go with your first thought, your first instinct.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's intuition, huh? That's interesting.
Yeah. Or that could be I feel like getting gas at this place, but that's kind of weird because that's out of the normal. But then you go get gas there, and it ends up, it would have been way easier because now you need to go somewhere else on that direction, something like that. Yeah. So in those smaller moments is a great way of practicing following it. Because again, it's super low stakes, right? It's just okay, I get the wrong thing on the menu. All right, whatever. So,
yeah. Do you think that sometimes it's based on past experiences that you've dealt with? And so you're like, oh, I remember doing that. I'm not going to do that again.
Absolutely. I think that is a huge thing to programming and conditioning, absolutely, that is what is a roadblock, I think, to following your intuition. And that's why I think it's helpful to look at it as this muscle that you're practicing, or you're trying to develop. And not every exercise is going to be perfect for it. And I certainly don't follow my intuition perfectly. But then I learn from every experience and try to navigate from there.
And that goes into your brain. So it's sitting there.
Yeah.
For you
Yeah.
to access at any time, but you're not
Yeah.
realizing that probably.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, so I have a course called Broken to Balanced, a game plan to improve your mother-daughter bond.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you if intuition could play a role in helping daughters navigate difficult conversations or conflicts with their moms.
Yeah, that's a big question. Because obviously I have um my mom who's alive, and love her. She's amazing, but there's, it's the mother-daughter relationship is obviously one of the most beautiful, but also I think most challenging relationships,
And complex.
And complex. And so I think, like, as I think of for intuition for me, I think it is a little tougher too when you've got somebody who that relationship just is so deep, and there's so much, and they're so involved. And then there's the whole discussion of boundaries, but then being a daughter. So intuition has absolutely helped me, I guess, navigate my own boundaries better. So like when I think of some of our challenging times, and what feels right for me. And that's how I access my intuition a lot, is just asking myself questions.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what do I want to do in this moment? Like, say we're having a tense conversation. It's like, what's best for me in this moment? Whatever thought comes up, I feel that's my intuition. That's my inner guidance, right? So if the thought that comes up for me is like, maybe you should share this, or maybe you should step away, or maybe whatever it is, like that is accessing your intuition in that moment. I think, another way to think of intuition is so I've heard it explained this way, like intuition makes you want to lean in. Like what feels right, you're leaning in. Fear is like when your body actually wants to sit back. So I'm thinking of in a conversation with my mom, if it's like, should I share about this? If my body actually wants to sit back, that's like, no, we maybe need to create a boundary here and step away. If my body wants to lean in, maybe that does mean it's a good time to share, or I'm in a good place to share. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So are you physically going back or going forward, or are you just thinking this?
For some people, they do. But for most people, I think it's just a feeling. So like I could ask you, Kim, do you want to go to Sedona? That just came to mind for me. Like, what does your body feel like it wants to do? Does it feel anything?
Body. Oh, I want to go. Yeah, I do want to go.
Can you feel like, even though you're sitting straight, does it feel like there's any, like, I know your body's not physically moving, but does it like, can you feel any move, like energy? Maybe that's the way of putting it. Like, can you feel energy of like wanting to lean in, or like
kind of pulling back, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So, and that's like a first place of like just exploring. Because again, you can ask yourself questions. Like I think of, again, I think a lot of through the lens of like business, because that's where I practice it a lot.
I was going to ask you about that, about using intuition in business.
100%. But like like the employee example, like I could use that, like, oh, do I want to lean in to hiring this person? Do I feel like my body's actually leaning in? And then whatever shows up first is, because then immediately our rational mind starts getting in the way and
Right.
going through everything. And so it's whatever like that feeling is. Another way, and it might not be leaning in for you or like sitting back. It can also be like this feeling of expansiveness. Like, does going to Sedona feel expansive or does it feel constricting? If it feels constricting, it's not for you. But if it feels expansive, then that's maybe a yes.
I think it does, thinking about it once I get there. I think it'll be fantastic, but then it's getting there. Because, I'm not a big flyer. I was going to tell you something that I just thought of.
Yeah.
With my work, with my office, we were supposed to go to Chicago. I don't know how long ago it was, 10 years ago, in winter. And I don't like flying anyway. But we got to the airport and they said I could bring Mark with me. Because he had to be with me. So I went to the airport and I was hearing different people talking about the runways are icy. And I was listening to all this. Now, I don't know if this has anything to do with intuition though, because I was hearing people talk. But I called my boss. I don't remember where she was, but I called her. I said, we can't go. And she said, oh, she was okay with it. Wasn't really happy with it, but I just said, I can't go. And so our luggage went. We didn't. So later I found out, and I was able to connect with all the people online. We had everybody was coming in from everywhere. But what I found out was everybody that went got really sick.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I was so happy. I mean, they had bronchitis, pneumonia, because it was so cold. Wow. They're running around. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we didn't go. So I don't know if that's intuition about, I don't know what that is, but I'm so glad we didn't go.
No kidding. I mean, I think that's, I think like you are piecing together things, but there's also a layer of anxiety with it too, you know? Cause I've heard stories of the same thing with flights. And then somebody's like, I don't know, we can't take this flight. Like something's just like, I just have this feeling that we shouldn't take the flight. And then like the flight would, have to land, like they'd be in the air, they have to land early and then there's reroute and it would have been a whole mess. So stuff like that. And so I don't know, I think that was, just hearing your example, there is some anxiety with flying, and anxiety is fear, which is the opposite. But also there was maybe other pieces that you were piecing together too. But can I go back to your Sedona example for a second?
Sure.
Or because your first response was like, you looked like you were leaning in, or you even might have said that but then you're like, I think I want to lean back. And so as I observe you, I think if you can think about not flying and all of the stuff, like the idea of being in Sedona for you,
that sounds great,
is expansive.
Yeah.
But it's the fear of getting there. And so it's not necessarily Sedona. It's then your brain is starting to think of all the other things. And
it's not just the fear, it's all the stuff that leads to traveling and having to get somebody to watch the animals and all the stuff that leads up to it. I'm not a good traveler.
Yeah. And this just happened to me too, because I mentioned, having a new employee, like I have been in so much in my head, because it's, to be honest, like it's been, I've had a challenge, like finding the right people, as most places have. And so, and then I've offered people jobs over the last few years, and then you get ghosted, or you offer a job and they accept, and then they study for their test and then that falls through. And so I've been living through a narrative of being really discouraged with trying to find the right team. And so I recently offered a job to somebody, and there's the insurance test, and that was a challenge. And so then I was like, I don't know, like, I feel like maybe maybe this isn't the right fit. Like maybe this is my gut saying like, this isn't the right person. And when and I have a coach now who's helping me like balance this and filter it. So I'm really grateful for that. Because it's so much easier to see it for other people than it is for yourself. But when I really stepped back and peeled it back, like the idea of having a person is very expansive to me. That allows, it frees me from a lot of things that like are on my plate. But I had the fear of past experience, like you talked about, clouding what really did feel expansive. So that absolutely gets in the way. And it's with each thing you're trying to figure out, navigating through all of that. But if you can cloud out the, like, if I don't worry about money, if I don't worry about what that person thinks about me, if I don't worry about that, like what actually feels right in my body, does it feel expansive or does it feel constricting? And then operating out of that place.
And if it feels constricting, then do you just say, I'm not going to?
You try your best. I mean, like, you try your best. Again, like I'm totally not perfect. And I think of a lot of examples through business, and there's, with insurance, you can write everything under the sun, all these different things. And there's, like we have the opportunity to write business insurance, but for like literally everything. But some of these things are so random. And I've always felt like if I have that person like ask me about it, like I don't want to work on that, because first of all, I don't know much about it. It's going to take me hours and hours and hours to research about it. And then finding a place for the right fit for it is going to be exhausting. Like, but for a long time, I would be like, oh, I'm going to say yes to them because I feel bad for them. They can't find insurance anywhere else. Like they're stuck. I want to help them. But like that felt constricting, trying to help that type of person, because I just knew I'm not the right fit. And then when I would try to help that type of person, usually it didn't work out anyway. And all the time and energy wasn't worth it, because they might decide, you know what, I don't need insurance anyway, I'm good. Or it just like, it was a mess. And so that's that constricting feeling. And so when I could honor, like, if that opportunity came my way and I knew it didn't feel right, sometimes I still try to work on it, because I want to help that person. But again, I really now honor like trying to be like, Tennyson, you're not the best fit for that type of stuff. And they like, if you can help direct them and maybe help find them a resource that like specializes in whatever they're in, now they have somebody who specializes in it, and I protect my own energy and what's right for me. And it ultimately helps them as well.
And does that make you feel better when you're researching somebody else for them to go to?
Yes. I mean, how cool is that to say, like, hey, I'm not the best fit. Let me find you someone. And then you, and I don't always have answers. So sometimes, right, it's just saying like, I'm not the right fit, but you know what? If you know somebody in that industry, which most people do, like, I'm thinking of my clients who own like a hobby farm. Farmers insurance does not do well with hobby farms. That is not our thing. And trying to find a solution for them has been very, very hard. They know other hobby farm owners though. So I could say, hey, like, I am not the best fit for you, but you should go talk to your friends who own a hobby farm. I bet you they have a great person. And then it just works out so much easier.
What's a hobby farm?
Well, these people are amazing. They have like 3 acres, and they have they have alpacas and like chickens. They have 5 million chickens. Their chickens have tried to kill me. I swear their chickens have attacked me.
Tried to kill
But they host their space for like events, vendor parties and birthday parties. But it's at their house too. So it's just a really yeah.
And why
really
is it called
cool,
a hobby farm?
I don't know. That's what I'm calling it.
Oh, I thought that was a real name.
I think that's what I think they're called. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look up what a hobby farm is, but that's what I'm calling it.
Your intuition tells you it's called a hobby farm.
For sure.
So, how do you approach people who struggle to trust their intuition?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, I think there's a lot of misinterpretations with intuition. I think a lot of people, that intuition and instinct are so similar to me. I think
Yeah.
people understand the word instinct way more than we understand intuition.
And gut feeling, right?
Yeah. And so it feels like there's a lot more acceptance around instinct, but maybe not as much acceptance around intuition. Um, and so I think, oh my gosh, where was I going with that? But um, sorry, what was your question, Kim? I am
People
so
struggle
sorry.
to trust their
Yeah, I think,
intuition.
to me, it's been a very private practice. So, because I worry so much about I've classically worried so much about what other people think of what I'm doing, what I'm exploring. So for me, it's been very private. And so I would encourage people who do struggle with that to keep it private and just for me, I started like meditating a lot, which was never my thing. But in bed, I would just put earplugs in and then I would do a meditation and like that's my own little private place. Or so I don't know, I would say practicing it in small ways that work for you. Again, this example of like going to a restaurant or picking a meal on the food, like nobody needs to know about that. Like you're working through that and sorting through that in your own head.
So you don't want to go with people that you know and say, well, my intuition tells me to do this, but I'm not sure if I should do this. Like when
Yeah.
you say keep it private, your intuition, learning about intuition and what's intuition, what's not, you're saying keep it private. You don't have to announce everything to
Yeah,
people
that's
that
just
are around.
that's just what's worked for me. And I think I've learned how to land things in a way to other people where I don't sound like too crazy. Sometimes I do. But yeah, I mean, I think of even, you know, being with my husband, like say we're out somewhere. As a woman, I experience things differently than he does as a man. It's just how it is. And it is even hard for me sometimes, like if I feel, say, even like, and I'm now thinking of safety related stuff. But if I say, like, oh, my gut feels off about this, I might to him say, like, hey, let's walk this way. Like, I kind of want to check out those windows over there, because I think sometimes we like if I said, my gut feels weird about that, that for somebody else who doesn't experience how you do, like don't understand it as much. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Are
And
there
I
people
think,
who are skeptical about it? Or people who are analytical? Are they skeptical about
oh, I think
intuition?
100%. I think I want to read this quote to you or tell you this quote, but there's this quote by Albert Einstein, and it's basically the intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. And I think so much of our society is, I think there is the masculine and feminine energy, and a balance of both is like what we need. But I think our society is so like, what are your goals? What's your 5-year plan? Okay, let's put a process in. Like, what's the framework? What's the structure? Like that's really masculine energy versus the flow of more feminine energy of playfulness and maybe less structure. And that's so I think we are kind of in a way taught to have that structure. And so I think that there's a lot of skepticism because that's just like what we're surrounded by. And I'm not here to like disprove anything. Like I just like to operate in my own little world. And I've I've had enough experiences where my intuition has really led me in the right place. And it's such a I'm so grateful to have learned about it and practiced it and have my own little personal practice, because it's become one of the most meaningful things for me and has truly led me to all these experiences and people and things that I just wouldn't have had if I wouldn't have listened to my own self. So, yeah, for people who are skeptics, I think that it's a bummer, but that's whatever you want, that's cool. um, and I go back to that experience with the guy breaking in. I knew this person was coming in, and they're not in my body. They're not experiencing, they weren't there. They didn't experience what I did. So, yeah, I don't know. I just, yeah, I think but when you start to I think even my husband, who probably would maybe have been that's kind of interesting. He's started to see and make comments oh, Tenny has a good, Tenny, what do you think about that? So I think when you start practicing and learning about your intuition and following a little bit more, people observe and will pick up on things too.
Is there a relationship between intuition and creativity, do you think?
Oh my gosh, 100%. I mean, I would say I'm the least creative person on the planet, but I'm learning about creativity. And I think creativity for some people is that's their expression to not accessing their intuition, but in a way, accessing their intuition. Or for me, it's curiosity. A couple of years ago, I heard somebody say, "This is my year of curiosity." And when she said it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so good. I'm going to do that," because so much of my life I've been curious about stuff, but I was like, no, somebody's going to think I'm weird for doing that. Or am I weird for doing this? Judge myself, or that costs too much money. And so a couple of years ago, I was like, anything I'm curious about, if I can afford it, I feel excited about it, and it doesn't drastically impact people around me, I'm going to do it. And that curiosity has led to so many amazing experiences that have helped me grow and develop and meet people and develop relationships. And it's ultimately leading me on this journey that I'm so freaking excited about. So, and I think I'm also in a way more creative than I thought, but.
And how does it work with intuition? The curiosity, the creativity, how does that work with intuition?
I think curiosity is I think it's the door for intuition. I think it's almost synonymous to me. I think curiosity is your way of intuition showing up for you. So I was curious about a business coach a couple of years ago. I was like, who would be a good business coach for me? And literally I opened up my phone less than a minute later, and I'm in these groups, and somebody posted in the group, "Does anybody know of a good insurance coach?" And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So then I read all the comments, and somebody was saying this one name was pretty consistent, and I was like, oh, I wonder who this person is. And so then I'm like, okay, I'm going to get curious about this person and listen to a podcast with him, learn about him. Then I'm like, okay, I'm still curious. And so then I set up a call and we talked, and I was like, and then it was that feeling of, does this feel expansive? Does this person and meeting with this person, does it feel expansive or does it feel constricting? It felt expansive. So I was like, you know what? Let's go for it. And again, I think that's where a lot of people would stop, wait, this is too much money. You got to get out of that. And that experience, he was a phenomenal business coach for me. My business changed. he had me speak at his event last year in Las Vegas to almost 700 people. And it was the first time, sharing my story and landing into other things. And it all started from me like, I think I need a business coach. I wonder who a good business coach for me would be.
And then they appeared.
Yeah, they appeared out of nowhere. But yeah, no, it was, I think and this is like, honestly gets into like quantum physics and law of attraction stuff I'm like super fascinated about, but I have no way to articulate that into words. But like when you are putting the right questions out there, things are going to show up for you to help solve that question. And I think a lot of times people ask the wrong question. Like, why is my business failing? Why is it's more like, okay, who can help me? How can I make this better? Asking the right questions.
Have you read that book, The Right Questions?
No.
Oh, yeah, there's a book called The Right Questions. It's good. Oh, cool. It's really good.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is all about the questions you ask yourself, right?
Yeah. But curiosity, I think what I love about curiosity is it's so low stakes. Like nobody needs to know like what you're curious about. Like I can be curious about red shoes and just Google red shoes and start looking into that. And, that doesn't impact anybody else. So curiosity is just like, it's, and it's fun. Like it feels like to explore something you're curious about, like, that's fun and we need more fun. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm always curious.
Yeah. And I think because that is your intuition. Like,
and I am starting to ask questions. We were at a doctor appointment last week. Mark went in, I went in with them, and we came out. I had to go to the bathroom before we met again in the lobby to leave. And so Mark said, I'll just wait for you in the lobby. And so I came in to the lobby after I was done. And this man he's like wearing a necklace that showed he worked there. He was cleaning things, disinfecting things. And he says something to me about, your husband said something about the magic 8-ball and the weather's going to be good today. And I'm like, what? I'm so confused. And then he continues cleaning. And so I thought, I got to say something. I normally wouldn't, but I just said to him, who are you? Do you work here?
Yeah.
And he starts laughing because he'd said that statement. I go, I don't understand. Are you a doctor? Are you a cleaner? Or do you work behind the desk? I'm not sure. And everybody was laughing, and I could hear the front person, the front desk person, the other woman that was there, she was laughing her head off because I was asking all these questions. But he does work there. He worked behind the front desk, and he was just out sanitizing. But he just came at me with this 8-ball thing. I'm like, I was so confused. I don't know what you're talking about. But normally I would say nothing. I would just be okay. But now I'm asking. So, and then yesterday we were seeing Mark's brother in this home that he's in. And the owner of the home, I didn't know she was the owner because we were in visiting. And she came in, and I thought, I don't know who she is. She's introducing herself, but I'm like, who is this lady? Was she a nurse? What was she? So I said, are you the physical therapist? And she goes, no, I own the home. And I said, oh, that's so nice. Well, it's nice to meet you. But normally I wouldn't ask questions. I would just, talk and then leave wondering who are these people. So I don't know if that's intuition is being brave enough to ask the questions that are sitting on your mind. I don't know if that's just curious.
I think you're creating a practice to just be curious. And I think curiosity will ultimately start expanding for you to other things. And like for me, it was, listening to podcasts. And then I remember somebody mentioning they did a human design reading. And I was like, human design, what's that? But I love every personality assessment under the sun. So like, sign me up. I was curious, this curiosity formed in me. And so, and then I did a reading, and that's been one of the most huge things for me. And then the person I did the reading with, like, is somebody who I'm still connected with. And she's just this amazing person who I'm so grateful to know and have as a friend. And then something else I heard about, I was like, oh, it was called Akashic record reading. I'm like, oh, what is that? And previously I would have been like, oh my gosh, I'm like in the Looney Tune world if I'm exploring something like that. But I was like, again, if I can afford it, if I'm curious about it, like, let's check it out. And
That's kind of pushing forward with your curiosity, like taking your curiosity a step further.
Yeah, for sure. And again, and it's things like that, but it's also, I talked about, like, the other day I was in a coffee shop, and it was a brand new coffee shop. I've never been there. And frankly, I have no idea what to order at coffee shops anymore. And so I asked
how about coffee?
Well, I was like, I don't know. I don't want a latte. I don't want America. I don't know what, who knows? Need to spice it up in my world. So I asked the barista, I was like, okay, what's your favorite drink? Like, what's the most popular drink? And she told me it was like a strawberry matcha tea latte. And I was like, huh, like, I'm curious, like, what is that like? And so I was like, all right, let's try it. And not gonna lie, didn't like it. Wasn't my thing. I think I'm a matcha tea latte person. But if I wouldn't have tried that latte, I guarantee you, just, this is just me, it might not be everybody else, I would have been the rest of the day like, I would have maybe landed on my Americano and then gone the rest of the day. But and then wondered, what the heck would that have tasted like? I wonder what that have tasted like. And then it would have annoyed me so much that I didn't know what a strawberry matcha tea latte tasted like. So anyway, it's even little moments like that. And
so when you're offered one again, would intuition kick in saying, I'm not doing that again?
Intuition or experience, like you brought up, like, oh, that's not my thing.
So can intuition, do you think they can come from a number of experiences? Is it just you thinking about these experiences and you don't want to experience that again? Is that part of intuition?
I think that's all part of, I think your experiences are part of your being, in a way, your soul, your experience. And like, if you put it to this higher wisdom, inner knowing, inner guidance, like, your experiences are a part of that, right? And so absolutely, for sure.
Except for sometimes you can't identify why you're feeling this way. And it might be based on past experiences, but you can't come up with it in your brain at the moment of why you don't want to do something.
Most likely you can't. Like, that's trying to rationalize, right?
Yeah.
That's trying to use your rational mind. And
right.
yeah, so I think it's a combination of probably, past experiences, but also this inner guidance, wisdom that ultimately wants the best for you, and the best life for you.
And the awareness, you have the awareness when you are going back and forth with, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do it? So you have an awareness thinking, why am I questioning this? Right? I mean, that's the awareness that comes with intuition?
Yeah, well, I think awareness is like the starting point in a way. I think we all live lives that are so busy. They're so chaotic. Everybody says, I'm so busy. And it's true. People are so busy. There's dual income, families, households, and kids and activities and all the things. And so we get so used to like having to juggle all these balls. It's not like we're like, honestly, almost become unaware of like, whoa, like, what am like, I'm kind of frustrated with something, or I'm unhappy here, or I want to change here. Like, we don't ever travel. Like, it's almost like we become totally unaware. And so I think that's what I've really loved about like meditation, or like the work I've done with my therapist, and just like practicing to find a moment to pause and like, how do I feel? Like, what is like, oh, like my back is bugging me. I don't know. What's that coming from? Like, so I think awareness is the starting point to being able to really start tapping into it. But unfortunately, I think we're just like surrounded by stimulus that it's really hard to separate from that. And so creating a practice where you can become aware. And for me, that's been meditation, just finding intentional time to pause and to get out of like the craziness that, is life.
Do you meditate on something you're thinking about? Or do you just erase everything from your mind? Like I'm doing it every morning. And
are you doing it as a like just quiet time or?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
because I know it's good for your brain to do it.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing it every morning, just 10 minutes every morning with the
Yeah.
daily calm.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to, you bring your mind back to the breath, and I'm
Mhm.
doing all of that. But
Mhm.
sometimes people will take something like they'll take maybe even a stone,
Mhm.
like I don't know what kind of stone I'm thinking of, amethyst stone, and
Mhm.
they'll hold it while they're meditating, and they'll meditate on something that they're thinking about.
Mm.
I've done that before, but do you do that ever?
Uh,
Not with a stone, but do
no,
you
not
ever?
usually. So first of all, I think it's whatever feels right to you. I think everybody is so different. And so it's so cool to like listen to what other people do and experience. But if it doesn't feel right to you, then try to explore what does feel right to you. I can't say that I've meditated. So when I first was introduced to meditation, I only knew of the Headspace app, and what's his name, Andy, and like I tried so hard to like it, and I just didn't. And then I was like, gosh, am I weird? Because like everybody loves Headspace right now. Everybody's talking about Headspace, and I was like, this is not my thing. And so then I just like totally stopped, not my thing. And then my therapist had a couple YouTube videos of some meditations that, because he works for a school and he put them out during COVID just to help with the anxiety that people were experiencing. And so I was like, oh, I'd be curious to listen to my therapist do a meditation because, I have this relationship with him and I trust him. And so trying his meditation felt very like comforting because like I trust this person. And his meditation is really just about like getting aware in your body. So it was like, okay, I feel my butt in the chair. I feel my arms on the table. And just starting to, it's called like a body scan. And
Mhm.
so, and then it was like, hey, is there any part of your body that's speaking to you? And I actually did. And it like my upper traps were like kind of bugging me. And so then it was like, okay, listen, do you feel is coming from that? So that's where I was. And then after it, I was like, dude, I feel good. Like I like this. Like that was nice. It was like, 8 minutes long. So it wasn't that long. And so that's where I started. And then he had always talked about the app Insight Timer. I know there's also the Calm app. And so I started exploring on Insight Timer, and Insight Timer is really cool because I really like the guided meditations that guide you. So, and there's all different types of ones. There can be,
Yeah.
sleep meditations, anxiety meditations, release limiting beliefs, release worry, call in your power. There's kid meditations. And so I would just filter the topic or whatever felt like I wanted to, like that felt on my mind. And then I would look through them and see what felt right. So usually it was, so it's always been somebody guiding me through the meditation versus me doing it on my own. Cause we all have thoughts that come in and I don't have the mental strength to figure that out on my own yet.
Yeah. And so when you were doing this quiet time with this guided meditation, are you saying that that helps be more, what's the word I'm looking for? Does it help you with intuition?
Yeah, to me, it ultimately develops awareness. When you're practicing being aware of your butt sitting on the chair, your back on the thing, or, in some of these guided meditations, like, how do you feel? Like, where is that coming from? All of that is helping develop awareness in general. And and clarity and calm your nervous system. I think that's a huge thing, is just having a calm nervous system so that you are receptive to feeling what comes in.
Receptive. That's what I was thinking. Yes.
I love it. So yeah, I think it's being able to have our bodies in this calm, receptive place. And to me, just getting aware is that, door that opens that.
So, are there any books or podcasts that you would recommend about the subject of intuition besides The Gift of, was it The Gift of Fear?
The Gift of Fear. Yeah. I mean,
Is there another one or any
yeah,
podcast?
I have one sitting here. There's one called Intuitive Being by Jill Willard. I'm only about halfway. It's content heavy. So to me, reading it is like, oh my gosh, this is tough. Podcasts, that's a great question. There's so many books about intuition. So I would just, and podcasts. So I would just, search.
Yeah, just type in
Kind
the
of showed
word.
up in different ones I follow, but I can't say that there's a specific like intuition podcast or intuition book that has like nailed it for me.
I was going to say, what does your intuition say?
My intuition says like, I don't like to direct people to like specific books because they all have their own layer of belief. And so my intuition says, get curious. And if podcasts are your thing or books are your thing, search for the topic and then start, looking at the titles and readings and see what feels right.
Okay. I was going to ask, where can people find you? They want to know more about you.
Yeah. So I, on my social media, I need to figure that out at some point, but it's been private. But I have started to try to write a weekly blog that's just fun and essentially me exploring what I'm curious about and how I'm translating to intuition. So, if you email hello@tennysonjacobson.com, I'll get a link and you can follow along on the blog. And just my goal is to keep them short. There's nothing to promote. It's just to be fun and show what I'm exploring and curious about and the random things I look into. So
I love that. That's pretty cool. Is there anything that I didn't ask you today that you'd like to share?
Yeah, what thought just popped into my mind is it takes courage to follow your intuition. Usually intuition is different than maybe what the other people around you think or feel, because again, they're not experiencing what you are. And so that's been one of the biggest lessons for me, is acknowledging it takes a lot of courage to follow your intuition, to listen to it, to give yourself grace when things don't always go exactly right, but just know that it does take a lot of courage, and you are so brave, even in those small moments of practicing it and trying to explore it. And that's really, really, really cool. And it's so worth it. So yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you for coming on again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it so much.
That was so much fun. You'll have to come on again, like we talked about in the last episode, when your book comes out.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. It'll all be like, even more pieced together, which will be super cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll let you get back to your day. And it was great seeing you again. And I hope to get together with you soon.
Okay. Sounds great. Likewise.
Bye.
Bye, Kim.